All right. Do I do? All right. Um, Meeting is called to order. It's 5:01. My watch was slow. Um, this is a workshop where we just do a lot of discussion and we don't make any decisions at this workshop. So we're glad for those who are watching at home and for those who are here. Just a reminder, my husband was suggesting that we all hold our ink pen about that far away, and that's as close to the mic as you should be when you talk. And I have a 96-year-old mother at home who's hard of hearing, and she's watching tonight. So if she hears, you know you did good. I'll report next month. So we're going to start the meeting with just to discuss some things, and I understand that Mr. Louis Breedlove is here from Brooks and Watson, and we're going to start with our discussion of the audits.
There we go. All right. Thank you guys for having me. I know this item that we're talking about is the audit so this is for fiscal year 2021, 2022, our 2020-2021 fiscal year. First, I want to give a quick recap on what we've done so far. So when we were engaged to do 2020-2021 fiscal year, but that also included beginning balance procedures that were necessary as the last audit completed was for fiscal year ending 2020 or 2018. We first completed, we got all GL activity from the system for fiscal year 18-19 and 19-20 to get us through to that 2020 beginning balance. So that way we made sure that any potential capital assets that may have been purchased throughout the year, any debt potential that may have happened during that time frame, which I don't believe any did occur during that time frame. But we examined all activity to make sure that nothing material was missed during that period that had been skipped. I don't know if this keeps on, if it keeps on going out on me a little bit. It sounds like, at least. Sorry. I want to make sure your mom can hear me. So. So we first did those 2 years of activity. Then we tied out all beginning balances for the year by confirming with third party, wherever possible, bank, property tax. We were able to obtain sales tax information, other things from the comptroller's website. Every single balance sheet item that is there, we've tied out, besides a couple little bitty balances that were immaterial. But the majority of them we tied out. There was a lot of cleanup that occurred. The old system, there was some settings within the system that caused some pretty material differences and things that got hung up in the system. So working with Carrie and staff, and we were able to identify those issues and get some journal entries in the system to get those corrected. So it also in that time frame, it did require a bit of waiting because there was a system switch, which also you all hired a third party to help get that caught up on the bank rec side in that new system. So once that all was, I think that was late summer, once that kind of got updated. Forgive me if that time frame is a little off, but I think late summer or post summer, we were able to get the updated, fully reconciled trial balances and get into that new system that has online access that we're able to review as well. And then actually start making those 2020-21 fiscal year testing selections. So we've tested a lot of activity for that year, the majority of it actually. There also are some time sensitivity reports that we have to wait on. If you don't run certain reports right at year end, you can't go back and run that report and get the same information you would have at year end. So there were a couple of time sensitive reports that we're having to do some additional analytical procedures and testing on to make sure that we're comfortable with those. But we are very close. I have a short punch list left that we chatted with Carrie and Ryan over. So majority of those, I think, we should have tomorrow morning based on, I think, at least a handful of those we'll have tomorrow morning. And so I think we're in a good spot to be able to get the testing done, hopefully, if not by the end of this week, the first of next week. And then it'll go into that review phase and then report drafting phase. So the end of March is probably unlikely to actually have a final report. But April, there should be no reason for us not to be able to get it issued in April and hopefully present at your regular meeting in April. That's the goal, at least. And so, barring any unforeseen issues that pop up in those few items that are pending, we should be in good shape to get that out there that date. But I know this is a workshop, so I'll open up to any questions you all might have.
Anybody want to ask a question? Go ahead, Dorothy.
Well, we talked a little bit ahead of time,
Same.
and you are going to provide, at least me and all of council, if you're interested, the punch list of what you're expecting our city to provide to you by when, so that we can get an early red flag if it doesn't happen.
Sure.
Okay, and then we're targeting the April 9th council meeting to have those financial statements presented, but we will go into a special session, it's that important to us, to have those presented if they're not ready by the 9th, or if you want to present them earlier than the 9th.
Yeah, if certainly if it's available and ready to go earlier, as soon as we have like a date that we like, okay, these should be issued on this date, I'll let them know that this will be available at this date, is if it seems feasible, or if there's, enough, if it makes sense to try to call a special meeting before the 9th, then certainly we can do that.
Other questions? Mr. Breedlove?
I just wanted to see, can you kind of talk to, because it's a multi-year process that you're going through, what it looks like after we receive the first audit,
Yes.
what that time frame kind of looks like, so everybody can be on the same page.
Yeah, so assuming we issue and present at April, we should be able to turn that right around, leave a little room for journal entries to be entered. I think, talking to Carrie, I think there may be a couple items, and hopefully by that point, those are cleared up, but reconciling items that are getting mapped in that new system, like 10 or so items that need to get reconciled. So we'll, assuming, once we get the updated trial balance for 21-22 fiscal year at that point, and the GL and all the other items that we have on that PBC list for that year, we'll be able to start making the necessary testing selections, get the ball rolling.
And that process is about 90 days or 180 days?
It really just depends on the time of year. So we're going to be going kind of starting to edge into that summer. And so things kind of...
Are you planning on starting in April after we finish these?
I would expect us to be able to start testing in May, like selections. I mean, this is assuming we get by the end of, hopefully mid to late April, we get the updated trial balance. So this would be, I think that's the most aggressive we could be at this point in terms of timeline. Would be.
Carrie, is that realistic?
I mean, so basically, when he gets me the journal entries, to what he's talking about, the auditor or the consulting firm, the consulting firm has already done all the bank recs through 2022. There's about 10 items that I need to make sure that they know where to post them to, that they didn't see them. Some of them, when I first went through it, it looks like they were coded. They just probably missed them, not being familiar with our system as much as I am. So yeah, I mean, I would think if they can get them posted, if we can get it in that April council meeting, I would think that we should be able to have the trial balance to them by the end of the month. So, and then Lewis will,
By the end of April.
by the end of that,
Yeah.
month, yeah, right. So, and then we'll chat about the 19 and 20 too, just when you're done explaining this.
Yeah, so once we get that, typically a week of scrubbing that data, getting selections together, and then I would assume it'll take a couple weeks to get support. So early target would be like, okay, we can start moving on testing the support for those items mid-May. And then, so let's say be able to issue it in June, the next audit, I think is a reasonable timeline, assuming there's no surprises.
What about pulling documents?
Well, that was one of the things that I started when I got here. So we have tried to digitize all the invoices and stuff like that. So actually the pulling of the documents, like I said, the one that hung me up trying to find the documents was I had forgotten that I'd given Mott Vernon all those checks over a certain amount if they're going to do high dollar testing or, on the random sample. So I was trying to figure out why they weren't in our software. And so then I realized that then they were in a box because I'd already given them to Watt Vernon. And so that took me a while to figure out where it was. But yeah, now that I remember all this stuff, yeah, I mean, I would think we would be able to have them, if they give us a sample, we should have it back to them within a week type deal. So,
Yeah. So assuming we can, I mean, I do, like, the time it takes, the time it's taken for where we are now has definitely been slower, and understandably so with all the variables with the system switch, but also just how old the support is. It's been in storage and just, I totally understand. I mean, some cities are quick to move their stuff out of the building. So having to unpack a box in a storage unit somewhere or wherever it is, I understand not being able to just go grab it and provide it right away. So, so it's been understandable. So, but I think, yeah, as we get into the more current period, it's only going to be easier moving forward, especially if it's been digitized, a lot of it. So,
And then from there, you move into 22, 23?
yeah, my goal is to be able to get you all caught up before your normal 23, 24 fiscal year audit would hopefully be.
So by the end of September of this year?
The goal would be to have it issued before the end of September. So,
that'll be the one with the conversion.
so that's
So,
Well,
so will the conversion hold us up?
It is. So, I mean, the sandbox environment basically, and don't quote me, I don't care to remember that date, but let's just say it was the end of January of 2023. So in the sandbox environment, it's going to have 4 months of 23 activity. And then really, when they convert, hopefully they're going to be able to layer in anything that happened, the conversion date for the sandbox, all the way up to, going live with the software.
What do you mean when you say sandbox? I'm sorry.
So basically, not being able to do this in Encode. So when we converted to FundView, with basically last year's budget amendment, basically FundView came and took that data and said, hey, we're going to, at this point, we're going to look back and we're going to take all your historical data and we're going to put it into FundView. If that date was January 31, there is no subsequent activity in FundView after that date.
Right, okay.
So right here, that we would have the first 4 or 5 months or whatever whatever that conversion date was, but that's where then
That'll have to be caught up.
correct. Well, and then yeah, so whenever we go live, depending on however they truncate, or anything like this, but really we're trying to sign the agreement. I need to ask Catrice something, but I mean, really, we're trying to sign the agreement to go live now. So then they can already go ahead and start that. I mean, that's not going to hold up the 21 or the 22 audit, but there's no reason not to put another roadblock in there, because when we had the kickoff meeting with them, they were saying it would kind of be about May before you'd be able to go live anyway, May to June, just because they have other clients trying to hop on board too. But
Well, let's target 21, 22 to be done by July, and then maybe in
I still think that, yeah,
May or June.
we can revisit it. And obviously, once we have those, I'll say, yes, we're full blown live. And then really, all the other stuff is actually converted pretty easy once we've done it. So, I mean, it really is just actually getting the bank recs in there. So it's going to be one little negotiation thing with me of trying to tell FundView, let's try to do it one way, because with their software engineers, they should be able to layer on the activity post conversion date to go live instead of creating two new, a whole new
I know
environment.
conversions, there's always,
Right.
ideally.
you don't know.
They're pretty, with my experience with FundView, they are pretty very user-friendly software, and I think usually pretty easy to work with. So hopefully they can, just like before, extract that data and drop it in. I mean, there quite possibly could be a scenario where they can't do that because it's already been done once. But if that's the case, then we can extract it, come up with the necessary journal entries to get it into the system. We still have the detail that supports it, and we can move forward that way. Ideally, they'd be able to drop it in,
Kind of a combo.
kind of a combo. Like, so ideally, they'd be able to drop it in. That'd be the best. But if for some reason they couldn't, there's a workaround.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to make everybody, bring that up. The next audit after, the next one sounds like it's going to go really fast, but then we have this
Conversion.
software conversion that may create a couple of hiccups. So everybody should anticipate that.
And it may not, but the way things
Right.
go out here, it
Right.
will. So,
Yeah.
and then the next one, since it was on the work plan, and obviously y'all can adjust the timeline however y'all want to on the document. But I mean, we were chatting about the 20 or the 19 and the 20, years that will be unaudited. So I kind of spoke to him that we probably will want some level of report, whether it's a review or anything like this. He kind of laughed that he's never done a review for a city before, but
Yeah.
we want something from a
We
CPA.
need to understand legally
Right.
what we have to do.
But yeah, I don't, and I emailed TML and they did not seem to think that there was any legal requirement besides what would be on our debt covenants or, like our debt restrictions
Well,
from.
it's a law that we have to be audited every year. So,
Yeah, I mean, TML legal did not seem to think that there was anything to.
It'd be good to get
Speak
something
to
from,
that.
in writing from them.
I was
Yeah.
just
Do you
going to
wanna-
say,
No, it wasn't,
thank
yeah.
you.
This was an email response
Yeah.
from them.
Well,
so
then
I-
great. But yeah, I do like and when we first started communicating about doing the 2020 audit, it was like, okay, well, obviously we're skipping 2 years of activity. We, like I did say, we did review a lot of that and test a lot of it, but we didn't audit it. So it was going to be and will be on the letter that comes with the report, a recommendation that something be done over those. And so whatever is necessary to accommodate and meet the legal requirements is obviously what
wrestle
needs to be
that?
done.
The statute says that you have to have an annual audit,
Mm.
but that's, in effect, that's all it says. It's just about a 1 or 2 sentence section in the statute, and there's no penalty, nothing that says what happens if you don't do it.
Section 103.001 annual audit. The municipality shall have its records audited annually and shall have its annual or financial statement prepared based on the audit.
So I will say,
Which means we
Right.
have to audit it in my.
Well, so this is the reply from Tad Cleese at TML Legal Counsel. He's a legal counsel at TML. He basically said, "I do not believe there is any state level enforcement mechanism related to municipal audits.
Right.
This is local
I agree with
government,
that.
It contains the requirement to conduct an annual audit. Blah blah blah." So, but in terms of any state agency or any comparable authority coming into force the city to act, no agency appears to have that authority.
Okay, so if we go out for a bond and we have 3 current audits, I guess we just have to wait and see what the bonding,
if you have a bond counsel, I might even already start talking to them, like, what would happen on y'all's end if,
Well, and so that was kind of part of that CIP
okay,
FAR one that I don't know if we're actually going to have time in a 4-hour workshop to go over the CIP and the FAR, but that government capital at TML, I don't know who all stopped by their booth, but they've been wanting to come out and kind of present. So I think the best recommendation is to have the CIP FAR meeting, let y'all kind of digest it, and then kind of reconvene kind of early in April and have them come and present and kind of walk us through the weeds of what all we need to do, because action will need to be taken probably sooner than later to kind of actually have debt issued as soon as the other one falls off, if
okay.
that's the
So we know
route.
it's still out there.
right? And also just to keep in mind, we did do 2020 balance testing, so half the work for like the 1920 fiscal year has been completed.
But then you would still almost have to begin.
You would
have a
really have
beginning
to-
balance to 18, 19.
You at least know what the balances are going to be. You would still have to test all the activity for
Right.
the year, but
By the operation.
at least we know balance sheet for 2020. That's locked in. So I guess really not half the work's done, but at least a portion of that work is done in terms of at least having confirmed it and tested, cut off, and all those kinds of things.
I like keep moving forward. I don't know how anybody else feels.
Yeah, obviously, those numbers are stale, and so it's all
Not going to give us any
historical.
benefit unless it's a requirement
Yeah.
Right.
to get money.
Yeah, if we have 3 years of audits, we may be able to go forward with bonds, and then there's no reason to go backwards,
Or I think at a minimum, we would need either a compilation or review. I would want some piece of paper that were our
It's rec-
financial statement.
Yeah, our recommendation was going to be that something should be done over those periods.
I have a question too.
Yes, ma'am.
Once we get all the audits caught up and we're ready to do, 24, 25 or whatever, how long can we anticipate an audit would normally take?
Yeah, so what we do as a firm is we have our scheduling, like, it's almost like NFL draft. It's like, hey, we're gonna set this out. We have many cities that we audit, and so we line out the schedule. We also beforehand chat with the city to see, hey, we when will you be ready? What's the best timeline for you all? All that kind of information is gathered, and then we compile the schedule for that year. So then, from whatever that date is, typically field work's going to take a couple weeks, and there's a couple weeks of review, and also depends on if are we waiting on something from a third party and support. So typically, you're looking at a month and a half on from field work to review to like that's going to be the goal would be a month and a half.
Okay.
But now the staff needs to get ready.
Once
So
they
if we
start.
close
Yeah,
September
once you start the
30th,
audit,
we might be
your part would a
January
month and a
before
half.
we're ready, right?
When is the earliest you presented this year, like a city's audit?
Well, as
For
far as when we
23
start,
audit.
so what I'll tell you is we usually the earliest we start with a 9:30 year end. We typically, October's not going to happen, right? We don't touch it. You need at least a month to start closing stuff out. The earliest we touch anything is typically the first week of November, and even then we go in knowing there's journal entries that are coming our way from the client because sales tax, we still know there's going to be at least one more sales tax accrual, and there's going to be invoices that come in November that are pertain to September. So that's the earliest we would come in, and that's us being aggressive on the ones that are like, hey, yeah, start, we're ready to go, and we can be ready. And we know they're going to provide us with some client proposed entries.
Yeah,
once
so
we start.
realistically, for our city, since we've been scrambling for 2 years, I would
More than
say
likely, it's we're a
January,
January,
yeah.
February client.
Do you look at a
Realistically.
January as being a reasonable expectation?
For
January?
the start date.
Well, I mean,
And then they would take a month and a half.
And you would have the PVC request far before that, so you'd be able to like start. Even there's lots of things that you can start compiling throughout the year, and then also there's like okay, year end. These are the things you can pull all the things that you know don't change, and then obviously you just would be waiting for okay, I know things are going to be coming in, so I'm not going to send the trial balance to the GL yet. I'm going to be waiting for those things, and then once whatever date, you're like, all right, we're good, we're cut out for the year, then you can compile those and send them over. So it could, but all that to say, it's not like, okay, here you go, now we have to focus for a week solid to pull everything. It's, you have the list well ahead of time to where you can start kind of game planning for who's going to pull what, when, and all that. So you can kind of start planning ahead for it.
And we'll be able to get those year-end reports because we'll be timely on getting.
Yeah, and I don't know if FundView may not have. Well, you're still using some systems outside of FundView, so but if like Encode, Court, and things like and utility, those things are still in Encode, right? So those you would
I
like.
mean, everything will go over to FundView. So,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, and to its point, it's more they tell you to close the year, and then you have all the way through December. But if you don't run that right at 9:30, then you miss it. You can, which is still funny, kind of with our utility billing that we're a month and a half behind anyway. Because if they're trying to actually get water sales through 9:30, they really need to look at the November utility billing anyway. So it's kind of, it's just it's an interesting one because as we go to FundView, would it make more sense if we can adjust our utility billing slightly to catch more up or anything like that? But I mean,
Yeah,
that's way too
that's a
far.
hard
Right? Yeah, I
nut to
know, but
crack.
it is funny because when they're
I
asking
don't think
for,
people want to be double billed in a month.
very-
so-
well, but at some point
Very
you
hard
need to.
transition.
Yeah.
I've seen
and-
it done. It's hard.
Yeah, it's, let's.
Yeah, you don't
we'll
want to do it in
take
the
that
summer,
on.
right? No, I get it, but I mean that's really when they're asking for, you want your 9:30 billing, but that is really July's billing here, so it's kind of funny.
I know this is off topic, I guess, but in that process, what I've seen done when it's done successfully is it's done slowly over the course of months, shifting it by days or up as most as weeks, and you can slowly get it to the time frame you want it. And because you're not going to feel a hit from 2 extra days in a bill versus a month.
Maybe in the
So,
winter time, not the
Does
summer.
anybody else have any other questions for Mr. Breedlove?
Well, I just have one question, and I don't want to rehash the past too much.
Mm.
But like slip in 2023, and then in December, we were told January. So can you tell me what happened between December and today? What slipped that we didn't get financial statements in January?
I'd honestly just have to look back. I don't want to make something up.
So there's nothing that pops into your brain that caused a
It was
day slippage?
It was likely, well, I mean, in addition to is our set schedule. So like we had committed schedules set. And that I couldn't, and in some instances, I did break some people out so we could get some more work done on your audit. But I couldn't like just pull as many people as I wanted at that time. And it also, there was things that we were waiting on. And I have to go look back and see exactly, because we weren't going to just, it's hard to start, stop whenever you have set, pre-scheduled audits.
You know, audits are pretty methodical,
Sure.
in my opinion.
Yeah.
And so if you think you're days away from the end of an audit and it ends up being 90 days,
Sure.
Something's wrong.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at.
Okay.
I
understand scheduling, and that has to be a piece of it.
Yeah, scheduling is for sure a piece of it. I mean, obviously, we have a punch list of things right now. So, obviously, we didn't have everything to be able to get it done. And it could have been, I think some of it was having to go pull old files from storage or whatever it was that we were like, okay, we're waiting until those things come in, and we just focused on what we had to do.
So, Mr. Breedlove, if you look back over the audits and you find anything that was a roadblock that you could tell us about so we could prevent it from happening again,
Sure.
that would be
Yeah.
beneficial.
The roadblocks
And I
that,
have-
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I have one final question.
Yes, ma'am.
Because I asked this earlier, but I didn't get a clear answer.
Okay.
When can I see the 24-25 audits complete and in our hand?
It would be the
What would be-
23, 24.
Yeah, but I'm looking for once we're done.
Once we're caught up.
Once we're caught up,
see.
how long does it normally take to do an audit where we start out with a good audit
Our goal,
behind us?
so obviously, the time frame it takes to flip the audit varies, just kind of depends on, the date it would be issued would vary depending on when we start.
Right.
However, the goal would be to have it issued before the end of March. So you have 6 months from the end of your fiscal year to get it issued. If there's bond covenants, that's usually what's set, is like, hey, you have 6 months, so 9/30, you have till the end of March to get it
So
issued.
that would be
So-
March of 26.
Right, so a reasonable expectation would be about 6 months after the close of our fiscal year.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's all I wanted
Yeah,
to know.
sorry if I didn't answer your question
Well, and just
clearly.
after the end of the fiscal year, because the
Yes.
close of the fiscal year from an accounting standpoint could be December, because you are posting stuff backwards. So just to make sure you're saying that right.
Okay.
So it'd be after the end of the fiscal year.
Yeah, after 9/30. So you have until the end of March in terms of, now, there's could be scenarios where if something popped up, I see it happen occasionally where something happens where you get pushed past that point, but we issue the majority of our 9/30 audits before, sometime between, the earliest you would see is December, and then the latest, or generally would be March. And so then anything after that, usually there's some circumstance that caused some delays.
Very good, thank you very much.
Okay, and then is
I
there
just
any-
want I think he has to leave, so.
Oh, okay, but I
Oh, I
want to
do.
follow up
I
on your
just
last final question, and that is there anything this council can do going forward to keep this process on track? I think that's the question you wanted to ask too.
Honestly, I think you guys are asking the right questions, and I think if there were issues on our end that we felt like we needed to reach out to council, would certainly feel comfortable reaching out, because at the end of the day, we work for the council. We don't. I like Carrie. I don't work for Carrie. I work for the council, and so if there's something that I need to do, if you all have questions, like, feel free to reach out. So we have the same goal. We want to get the audit issued. So
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Breedlove, thank you very much.
thank you so
for
much.
coming. We
I
really
appreciate y'all
appreciate it.
moving me to the top of the agenda as well.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Uh-huh. Safe travels.
Okay, that was helpful. Yeah, yeah. So, any other items that you would like to discuss on the workshop agenda? Does anybody have anything they want?
So while everybody's looking, I just want to let everybody know, there was some conversation about the Rudder Lane name change. I did reach out to those folks, and they did actually email me while I was sitting here with a couple different names that kind of fall within that. Yeah, within that,
Theme, the theme of the
Theme.
names, yeah.
within that theme, and their first choice would be Bridge Lane, and second choice would be Bow Lane. So, as opposed to the others. that they-
Mythological creatures, right. Okay, yeah, I love either one of those.
So,
Anybody have any opinion? I was just pushing back on the mythological theme in a boat-themed street area. Because I don't want to change the nature of the developers and what they came up with and bow,
Bow.
like the front of the boat. Mhm, bow and bridge.
BOW, like the bow of a
BOW,
boat. Yep.
mhm.
Okay.
that's just food for thought,
So-
you know.
Curious as to why the change came up. Any ideas? Just because they don't like it, or, I mean, I was just curious.
I can't tell from their letter that they sent. I included in the packet.
Right. It looks like they went through legal counsel,
They went through the call.
through the COG, in
Yeah.
order to request the name changes, so the council would have to approve the name change.
Yeah, so the COG can't, so they got kicked to us. And if we approve it, the COG can help implement it. That's my understanding.
Okay.
And so there's no cost to the city other than a street sign. This is the only lot on that street. There's no other even platted lot. So it's a single resident street.
Nobody.
Nope, that's what Urian said.
No,
Nope. Oh, you should, it's
There-
really
there-
an odd street.
yeah, if there are lots on it, and I'm trying to look in my mind, they're actually addressed off of the other streets that are around it.
Either Morgan's Point
It did-
Road or, yeah, or that main road, Aquatic or, yeah, Aquarius or one of those. Yeah, I drove it and that's it. It's really tight in there. They're really, and then Urian confirmed there are no,
There's just, I think, that storage
Yeah.
garage type building, which is,
backs up to the
Yeah,
road,
back-
really.
yeah.
Yeah. What do we want to, okay, well, I don't have anything else on that one then.
Okay. Anybody else, anything you'd like to discuss now at this point?
Do you want to talk about the employee handbook change?
I think the personnel policies would probably be the best thing to use some of our time for.
Okay.
Just so everybody knows, the reason that this was brought up is in reviewing our policies and what's in place, what's been adopted, and then verifying accrued leave balances that some staff have. My concern was getting some action taken before somebody else comes in, and takes action to follow the policy, because I'm a policy guy, and I don't know what the new person's going to be, if they're just going to be like, this is our personnel policies, they look good to me. But at this point, if something like that were to happen, over 50% of the staff tend to have a chance to lose multiple hours that they've accrued in vacation because the
There's
policy
been verbal promises made
hasn't been followed.
to the employees. There's an expectation that their vacation carried over, even though it was in violation of the policy. So,
Right, and the current policy is 40 hours for vacation. I think that the highest that we have is 160 hours for one of the staff. So my proposed, the proposed policy that I included in here with staff drafted up in the actual packet.
starts on 91.
Yeah, and I mean, I
Seven.
think it includes, I don't remember what it was exactly. I think it was 240 and 480 or something similar to that.
Yeah, maximum carryover of 240, and then on the sick leave, you wanted to do the 700 range. You had 480 in here, but you were recommending a little higher? No, yes?
Let me see, yeah, and I'll be-
760, that's what I wrote down.
I'll be 100% honest. The numbers I took, they're just arbitrary numbers. They can be adopted. You can say, you know what, let's stick with what we got. I just think that should something happen, like I said, I'm a policy person. Every time something happens, I say, what's the policy say? So if somebody else comes in with that same mindset, our staff are our most valuable asset. And because this is the standard that's been going on, to just automatically yank that from them,
But there are financial implications.
there are. But I think it would be very, and this is just me, I'll tell you guys how I see it. I think it would be distasteful, almost.
Yes, correct. Well, there is documentation, isn't there, in the payroll system of accumulated unused vacation,
but
right?
if you earn 120 hours a year, if you've been here, so if you've been here roughly 10 years and whatever that accrual is, if you're not taking your 3 weeks, you're going to keep adding to your carry forward balance. So,
Which is in violation of the policy. It's
Right.
use it or lose it is our policy in the past.
but yeah, that's where then depending on some of these other, not having a true HR person or anything like this, as the city manager is technically the head administrative person, that's not the best designed.
No, but we need to change the
Right.
policy, which is why we're here today.
Right.
So
Yeah,
the
more
question is, how
And-
do we?
And to speak to that, vacation sounds great. Everybody should take a vacation. Some people can't take a vacation every year. It's not feasible. When you're understaffed in certain spots, when you have priorities come up, you just can't take it. To say, well, you have to take it, that's one thing, but then if say there was an officer out, got injured on the job, and there was another officer backfilling his position, he doesn't have the luxury of taking a vacation. It just doesn't, he doesn't have it.
There will be exceptions, but it shouldn't be that everyone's an exception.
No,
So I recommended that we don't use 240 for every employee. If every employee had 240 hours, that would be $250,000 that if everybody quit today, we would pay out. Now, that will never happen, but that's a big number. So I don't know that we let every employee carry over 240 hours. So I talked to Ryan yesterday about a scale similar to what's on page 91. If everybody wants to flip over to that, unless you want to
I
walk
didn't-
through
I
that.
didn't have a time to update anything.
That's fine, but if you
for-
want to walk through it, or I'll walk through it, either one.
And you can walk through it if you like. It's a tiered system that she can talk through.
Okay, is everybody on 91? Okay, so that schedule down there on length of service is basically how you accrue vacation, each pay period. And it's 1 year or less, 1 to 5 years, and then it goes from 6 to 20. I'm proposing that we add a 6 to 10 group, and then the next group would be 11 to 20, and then the next group would be 21 years or more. And then a column added to the very far right that says maximum carryover. And I'm suggesting that instead of just 240 for every employee, if you've been here less than a year, you earn 40, you can carry over 40. If you've been here 1 to 5 years, you earn 80 hours a year, you can only carry over 80 hours. So it is just going to follow a new category, adding 11 to 20 year category, but basically you can carry over 1 year. Now what that means is, if you carry over, let's say I carry over 80 hours, I'm still going to earn 80 hours that next year, so I'll have 160 to take. So
Fiscal year,
it goes back.
it reverts back to your maximum carryover.
Right. And it is that rewards tenured employees. It encourages people to take vacation because that is real important, that we encourage people to take vacation, not just from a mental health and physical health, but also from an internal control standpoint. It's important to have jobs open so other people can step in and do their jobs for a period of time. Now, we do have an issue that Ryan and I talked about, is that we do have employees right now. Let's say I'm a 10-year employee and I can only carry over 120 hours. That person may have 200 hours right now. And so we did talk about giving a 2-year transition period, and I wrote up some language. Because there will be employees, when we implement this policy, that will be outside of this policy, of the new policy. And so giving the city manager discretion to work through the overage over a 2-year period. So if I can only carry over 120 and I have, 180, I have to work out those 60 hours of vacation over the next 2 years, because I will lose it at 9/30/26. So it gets at, let's get a policy that makes sense. Let's not penalize the people that were told that they could carry over this vacation, but let's keep it fiscally responsible for the city and not just letting accruals get out of hand. And also, we need to encourage vacation time. So that's kind of what I was thinking with that. Mm-hmm.
Assuming every employee left the last day of the year and they wanted their money.
Well,
You'd have to budget all that money in there, assuming they would leave.
absolutely, you are
do a
correct.
year-end entry.
Well, you could do it every pay period. Every pay period, you could, give the 1 year or less 1.54 years of vacation. And I bet the payroll system does that automatically. That we would set up an accrual every month per employee. And yes, Larry, it would have to be a booked liability. Yeah. So yes, we would have to budget for it.
And we did talk about that being a liability. We've talked about the financial impacts of that and what it looks like at the end of the year when people lose their carryover and the influx of funding that we would likely see if people didn't take vacation. The other thing that I don't just want to focus on vacation, I also want to focus on the sick time.
Right.
Which is what I included in here. And
Sick time's different.
sick time's a little different, but right now, when people reach the 480,
Right.
they stop accruing any sick leave.
Yeah.
So it's like they're working and for a benefit that they're not even receiving. That's basically how I see it. And
I agree.
I can be wrong, but people should technically still be earning that 8 hours of sick time, ultimately giving them however much that is over.
We specify what you can take as sick leave. So you're suggesting 760 hours? Or just let it go in perpetuity?
Well, I just put the 720 or 760 in there, like I said, as a number. My main concern was, right now it's 480, and I'd be good with 480 also. But as long as people can continue to earn that 8 hours so that they're not just stopped at 480, and then say they have something that happens 2 months after and they need 496 hours, well, they've only got 480.
Right.
Because we've basically capped them.
And this is something that is limited in the nature and purpose of your leave. So it has to be within the criteria of sick leave. This is not paid out if you leave the company. If you leave, sorry, I'm public. If you leave the city, all your sick leave is canceled. So this is something that doesn't have a fiscal necessary, hit on the city. This is just really, is this the right thing to do, in my opinion?
And I think, to Ryan's point, I think the other one is just an encode glitch. I think we probably have it to where it's showing that it's capped at 480, so we probably can quickly fix for those, 5 employees or so that are at 480 that are not adding to it, but it still should revert back to 480 at the end of the year if they end up at 540 at the end of the year,
But
or whatever y'all decide on.
I mean, there still technically could be some type of fiscal impact, because at the end of the year, I mean, you should still be accounting for it as you're accruing for it in case there are any of those overages that need to come back into the city's general fund.
My understanding is, and this is an auditing question, and that is that sick leave is cash basis only. So you only expense sick leave when you incur it, not when you earn it. But that's an auditing question. If you could check with Breedlove on that. Right?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's just part of like your normal salary, so you're gonna hit the expense, so, I mean, she's stating it correctly.
So there isn't, we budget for their salary, and if they go out on sick leave, the expense would be backfilling that
Salary,
position
yeah.
if we needed to. It's really
So I would just curious, Councilman Schneider, since you work the most with the employees, what's your opinion on some of this?
Now, I mean, it makes sense to me. The one thought I had was in discussion about the 2-year mark and blocking that window out so that, at the end of 2 years, whatever is over is gone. And is it possible, or would we want to consider allowing the employees a one-time, sellback, basically, rather than, kind of saying, hey, you got to take this over the next 2 years. Take it. Versus just going to,
One time,
yeah, so-and-so X, hey, you're going to have 20 days over. Do you want to sell those 20 days back, or are you going to take them? I don't know. It's just a thought that popped into my head. So
Okay.
since we're talking about, some employees don't have the option to take vacation all the time.
so you like the idea of the scaled maximum carryover?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. That makes sense to me based on longevity.
Okay, all right. Curious, anybody else? Any comments about that? Yeah.
I don't think anybody's been following the old rules. I don't think anybody's been following the old rules.
The old verbal rules, I think is what he's saying.
Oh, I understand the promises that were made to them. Yeah.
Of course, this is discussion and action at the actual meeting, but we don't have to, I mean, if you just want to give me guidance and have me draft something, send it back out, I'm happy to do that. We're going to meet at a workshop later this month. We'll have the April meeting. We can take action. I really just wanted to get it in front of everybody so we
Yeah.
could start having the conversation.
Stephen?
This is not the only policy where there's an issue.
Right.
There are a lot. So I anticipate a lot more policy revisions or requests will probably be brought before the council, but we're working on those internally right now. This was, I think, the most impactful one that I could see at this time.
So I just have probably a typo. I don't know. There was on page 92, on 9.0304 and 9.0305, they seem to contradict each other. And
There's a few,
just-
yes, okay, so yeah, 9.304, that shouldn't say full-time, it should say part-time, and I think that's what's getting confusing. And then 9.305, regular part-time employees should be deleted. I gave those changes to you, Ryan, too.
Okay.
Because it was contradictory.
It is contradictory,
Right,
and I
you're
was thinking, so what it wasn't clear to me, so thank you. All right,
And there's a couple other ones like that, too,
Okay.
where you're trying to define full-time versus part-time.
right,
Yeah.
okay.
And then I didn't like the word entitled. I think Ryan's going to change that.
For those definitions, of course, instead of, putting hours and everything in there, of course, the best reference is probably see section 5.01, which is the categories of employment.
Okay.
I'm fine. Oh, Stephen, did you want to say something?
Sorry, got something in my throat. I'm going to always advocate for the error of our employees, period. One thing I think about with the sick time is, and this is not in policy yet, and I think that we do this at my work, and I think that, catastrophic leave bank. And so I can donate 10 of my days to a catastrophic leave day. So let's say Uriah gets cancer, God forbid, but I can donate those days, and so he doesn't have to, if he had to be off for 6 months or 8 months or 9 months or a year. And I think that's something to put into policy.
And we had talked
like that
about
too.
adding that at a later date as well, a sick pool or a catastrophic bank or something like
Might as
that.
well put it in if we agree that that's something. It does make sense.
I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, we had that at my employment also. And there were people who ended up with
It saved them.
long-term
Yeah.
illnesses, and they were not able to work, and single-parent families, and things, and so.
I've seen it more
I
times
really
than
like-
not, helping
yeah,
people.
I like the idea of catastrophic. I think it's
I do
really,
too.
gives our employees a chance to, kind of help each other too, because,
Well, and the fact is there's some people that they can be sick as a dog and they're like, I'm still going to come to work because I'm not forward facing.
yeah.
And so if those days are just getting wasted, man, why not help your peers?
Yes.
I think it's a win-win.
Any other comments before we break before the meeting?
My apologies for being late.
We're glad you made it. When
You
come
missed
in
the
u-
audit stuff.
Mr. Schneider, when you come in uniform, we
That's right,
forgive
got most of
anything.
it.
All right, let's take a 10-minute break before